Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, changemakers. Welcome to the DEX Show. I'm Tom McGraw, joining you in a Friday afternoon in London. We're near the end of the day, near the end of the week. I am Timless today, however, but I am joined by a fantastic guest. I've been really looking forward to speaking to him for a few weeks now. He's Steve Walsh, Senior Consultant at Ayla Consulting. Steve, it's great to talk to you finally. Heard a lot of good things about you, read your work. I'm excited to talk.
You as well. I've listened to some of your podcasts. Of course, you've had some folks on that we mutually know, and so it's good to finally talk. And thank you. That's the most fantastic introduction anyone has ever given me. So right now, Tom, you're my favorite introducer and podcast.
Who are our mutual friends, Steve? Tell me.
I believe we have a friend, Jeff, who's also a fellow.
Yeah, you're both locals
yes.
to one another. Yeah, do you go back away or?
No, just coincidence, and I've only gotten to know him rather recently. So I think we have a couple mutual LinkedIn friends.
Nice. Yeah, the great Jeffrey Wright we're talking about, as regular listeners will know him. We've had him on the show, I think, 3 times now. Shout out to Jeff. Look forward to having him on again soon. Right, so, Steve, one of the reasons I was keen to talk to you is, well, first of all, because of your ideas and your perspective, which, as I say, I've read your work, so I'm aware of that. But also, you're something of a specialist, a career specialist even, in the whole area of DEX. Based upon your CV, based upon your work, this seems to be something that inspires you and something that you've really, really focused on. So I guess if you could just begin by giving us a quick overview of your career background and of your specialty in this area.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. So, interestingly enough, I fell into DEX accidentally twice. And most of my career was at Honeywell. Right. And it was actually in IT support. It wasn't in computing or DEX at all. I believe my first experience was actually with Eternity in 2011. Geez, that's a while ago. And DEX wasn't what we called it, but it was this visibility into the executive population that I supported at our headquarters, which I thought was the coolest thing in the world because, wow, right? You could see, some blue screen information, and it was basic, but it was a visibility into a new world. And we did a POC, and it was incredibly expensive, and I didn't get to play around with it any further. But it was my first introduction to the maybe the first DEX tool. One of the early ones for sure.
So I see. And what was it that felt like such a revelation at that moment? Why did you dig it so much?
Visibility, awareness. The expectation from the executive population was anticipating, their support needs before they knew what they were. Right. So, anticipating any kind of issues with a PC. This is 2011. Yeah. What was out then, and we had lots of issues. There was a lot of issues in the environment. Blue screens were our biggest pain point, I would say, at the time. Just conflicts of massive different software and conflicting drivers, and it was a little bit of a visibility into our local executives. Hey, go check this out, or hey, try to get to this laptop a little bit early because there's something strange going on, right? And it didn't provide any kind of scripting, execution of remediation, but it was a new window and new visibility.
And, did you feel that it had a future at that point? Did you think, well, this is a direction IT is inevitably going to flow in?
No, I would love to say that I had the vision to say, this is a great field in the future. But no, I moved on. There were tons of technologies that my team and I really dove into to support executives across their entire world, right? So DEX was one 1/100th of the overall things we're thinking about. So quickly went out of mind, and my next opportunity was a little bit of a reshifting within internal IT at the time, and it was late 2017, and Honeywell had procured NextThink after running a POC I was not involved with at the time. But I was told, hey, listen, there's this tool we bought, and we think it could do these things for our organization, and we think it's going to take up about 10% of your time in addition to your job. So would you like it? And I said, sure. I'd love to. I love new technologies, and the worst thing about all of that was the 10% of my time was vastly underestimated of what the tool would then unleash on my career, right?
I was going to say, they said 10% of your time in addition to what you're doing, which is like, which doesn't make mathematical sense. You should have said to them there and then, hey, listen.
Well, I think the assumption was I was going to automate some of, I still owned executive services globally at that point in time, so I would be able to automate some of my services as well, which in theory would free up 10% of my team's time. So it was a guess, but really the visibility into the environment led into the creation of a organization 6 months later.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask a corny question because it's the next thing.
Yeah,
podcasting. Please. All right, your first ever time you had a go on the tool. Do you remember it? Do you remember what your instinctive response was? And I'll be quite candid. I mean, I have literally spoken to multiple customers down the years who do remember that, and they remember it as being a real, like almost a revelatory moment. And I'm not saying you're going to. Maybe you don't remember it, and maybe it took you a minute to feel what its potential was. I'd just like to hear if you had something like that yourself, Steve.
Yeah, no, I think at the very beginning, out of the box, dashboards didn't really exist like they do today, right, when we first got started. So I think in the beginning it was getting it deployed, getting it architected, and then understanding what to do with the data and how to visualize the data you were receiving. At that point in time, I was managing a 120,000 device endpoint environment. So how do you visualize that massive amount of data when NextThink is updating every 30 seconds or less? That was the first challenge, and then once we got that data into a dashboard that made sense from a support perspective, it was kind of a shock of, is that how bad it really is? Yeah, I think. Remember, there was no DEX score. We created our own internal score, so that there was no baseline to say how bad our environment was. It was, we had to build the dashboards and then say, okay, here's where we're starting, and where would we like to go from here, right? We had our baseline.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But the baseline looked ugly.
Did it? It didn't look good at a glance. It's always a bit worse than you think, isn't it?
It is, and I think everyone would say the same thing about the environment when they get this kind of visibility is, oh my God, this is so bad. But I think if you look at your peer companies, it's maybe not so bad as it seems.
Yes. Hence the one utility of the DEX score, less celebrated, is that it shows you things are rarely as bad as you might fear, perhaps. Yeah. Yes, did you feel indeed. At that point that? So first of all, let's think about, you mentioned it kind of, the introduction of the tool at Honeywell then starting to kind of occupy more and more of your time. I mean, talk about that, if you will, like mission creep, where it was coming from and the form it was taking.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, it was about 2 months later from that late 2017 conversation that we were having a kickoff meeting with, consultants and folks from NextThink, folks from our various different teams gathered together, and the complexity of what we were doing. I realized probably instantly when we were creating our first hierarchy that this is not a 10% of my time job. So, the nice thing is 6 months later, I found myself as employee one of a new organization that we kind of branded as changing the IT culture from a support perspective. at Honeywell, right? And I know Honeywell recently did an event in London for you guys and talked about that story a little bit more detailed.
Right. So it was a great indeed, it was one of the highlights from experience, and that was a project that was quite integral to what you were involved in, was it?
Oh yeah, so I think you guys have it on your site for replay. So I think the story is much more interesting as spoken by Darren. But in summary, we're just looking at the vast consolidation of globalizing our IT at Honeywell, and there's a massive consolidation of statements of work across the globe, in addition to efficiencies there, automation efficiencies, where we saw massive 8-digit savings over our 5-year journey.
Indeed. And so, out of interest, so at that point, did that feel like a new road that you suddenly took in your career, a new area of expertise, or did what you'd been focusing on already, running that very large estate or having an overview of that very large estate, did that kind of feel quite consistent, like it was an organic development, or did it feel like, okay, this is a new thing to look at, a new way of looking at IT and at user experience in general?
Yeah, I think the biggest visibility that we receive with NextThink, and really any company can receive with any tool that gives them some insight, is what needs to be fixed, right? At a core of a mature DEX strategy is a mature security and computing strategy. They have to go hand in hand. And I see consolidation across those three areas. Absolutely. The data is there. Microsoft's looking to do their own thing in March, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously there's value in this space. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But really the Honeywell story was about the consolidation of our contracts and the automation opportunities that NextThink could bring. And a lot of custom scripting, a lot of custom development work, a lot of analyzing internally. Where were our ticket pain points? How many issues went underreported? This was all great insight that NextThink provided at the time.
You had us also, though. You had that kind of early brush with it, where it sounded like it made an impression, however brief a kind of engagement was with it back in 2011. I think you said. Now, from reading your work, this is obviously an area that has resonated with you. You certainly see the potential and significance. Now, you sound in your work like it's you're embracing it as a specialism, if you will. What is it about the space that you feel is a great fit for you as an individual professional? Is it that mixture of? Is there something in the kind of mixture of personal experience and technology that resonates with you? What is it, would you say?
Well, so I think in my career path, starting with support, and really, that's really my area of passion, I would say, mm-hmm, is around the customer experience and support, right? I unsurprisingly so, having run a white glove support organization for a very long time, when I then owned NextThink, I then had an opportunity to then own computing and then do something about everything that NextThink was telling me for a couple of years. So I had a little bit of a game plan and a head start on how to go, and address that area and the things that needed improvement. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, at the end of the day, once you clean up and look inward and clean up your house, so to speak, you can then focus on the experience and the automation piece, right? And so that's the exciting part to me, right? That's where you can have fun, because it goes back to providing the best support experience is not needing support.
Yeah, for sure. And looking back last year, so we can sort of get a sense of how what what's impressed you more recently about the DEX space, perhaps about NextThink specifically? What advances really have stood out to you, or what application of the advances was most impactful for you kind of across 2022?
I think the ability that NextThink and all the tools in this space is allowing the flexibility of data to flow in and out more freely. And what I mean is specifically about that is the incredible value of integrating, your data you're getting from NextThink and your ITSM stack, right? For example, right? Can you, when you integrate the ability, part of that Honeywell story that Darren talks about is getting that visibility into our ServiceNow platform or whatever you use, right? And actually seeing the impact of those automations against the total ticket volume, right? And being able to measure, hey, when I do this automation, this category of incidents goes away. I don't understand the correlation, but let me go find out, because that's good. Or vice versa. I did this and I thought it was going to do something positive in our environment, but it had the inverse effect. The reason why this stacks so well with computing is that's very much how mature patch strategies also are executed, right? You do not just execute across the environment and cross your fingers that it all goes well and you didn't cause an adverse impact.
For sure. And you mentioned ticket volumes, actually. I mean, it was one thing that really stood out about Darren's keynote at Experience was that there was a specific approach, right, at Honeywell towards tickets and automation. It wasn't we have to demonstrate through automation some diminution in the volume of tickets. It was like let tickets explode as we find issues and solve them in the same breath, as it were. And
yes.
I wonder if you could talk a bit about that and what the philosophy was there, and any observations you have about that approach, and why it's advisable maybe to think about it in that term.
I've talked to experts who are horrified that we took every automation that NextThink saw and we ingested that into event management and incident management within ServiceNow because ITIL says you shouldn't, or whatever rule, right? What we were looking is we were trying to identify heavy problem assets, right? Assets that, automation's hitting 20 times silently. What's wrong with the device? Why is this running? Can it lead to bigger problems? 9 times out of 10, it was outdated OS anyway, so problem solved. There's, could be an old bug, could be a vulnerability, whatever the reason, right? So, it's the data's it's definitely interesting for sure. Just the level of visibility, what you do about it, the support experience, it's the security posture. It's all very much intertwined.
Very cool. And looking now ahead a little bit, where do you see the next area as being really ripe for innovation in the DEX space? Where would you like to see innovation in the space?
I guess I could go in a couple different directions. We're working on some really cool stuff that I hope to talk about very soon to further accelerate and mature the DEX space. But what I'm excited about is Microsoft's introduction into this space. I think will be very interesting. I think we're going to see a lot of new players in this space, and in my opinion, that's just better for the customer, right?
Sure.
So I think this area is going to explode. Of course, Gartner talk about this area and the growth that's expected. Even if it's half of what they're saying, that's huge growth, right? So I think we're going to see a lot of new entrants. I think it should be interesting what Microsoft comes out with. I'm sure it'll need maturing, but if they're offering a client-less solution that's not too intrusive to the overall security posture, that could be very interesting for companies who are hesitating to jump into this market.
Right. I mean, that actually reminds me of some of your writing recently has covered, which is the need for DEX to, as it were, sort of pivot towards a greater engagement around issues of security and compliance. I mean, maybe you could expand upon that and illustrate why you think it's going to become perhaps increasingly important in the coming years.
Yeah, no, so, I think it goes back to the convergence of computing and security, posture, and DEX. It's all part of, I think, the same strategy. When you have a DEX tool, and depending on your computing stack, you probably have Windows 7 machines in your environment you're trying to maybe track down. And this could be an example, and we can't figure it out where they are for whatever reasons, and you want to reach out and they're using a generic login and you don't know the username. Right? Who are you?
Sure.
Who is this? Like, how do I find out? Right? That gives you that ability. Microsoft now has that via Toast, but you have to program that. So you could reach out and ask the question, and depending on how aggressive you want to get in your cleanup of your tech debt within your environment, do you disable that network card if you get no response, right? Every company just chooses their own strategy of how to proceed with that information. You just have another tool in the toolbox to help. It's not the only one you need, but it can help. Depending on how much you want to drive that out, you can automate your removal of those machines. Any DEX tool can assist in your zero trust strategy. Mm-hmm. So it can help. It's another tool for sure.
Another piece of writing I read recently from you was around assessing value of DEX, particularly assessing value of technology generally, particularly during a kind of presumed impending recession, essentially. And I was interested to hear your thoughts on that as it pertains specifically to DEX.
Yeah, so, most large corporations as we go into a potential recession situation, they have a playbook where, budgets do get cut. Typically, DEX tools fall into that bucket, unfortunately. And it's understandable. It depends on how mature that organization is using that tool. If they're not using it at all, then it might make perfect sense. But when you do that assessment, it's important to understand the full depth of how that tool might be ingrained in your overall IT operations, right? What can also happen is a leader who's unaware of how deeply integrated their DEX tool is in their overall computing stack. Hitting the don't renew button might be disastrous, right?
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
But that can apply to anything, right? Don't downgrade, your Microsoft Advanced Threat Protection to save a few dollars. It's probably not, a wise decision either, right? There's areas to cut, and I completely understand the need to consolidate tools. I'm fully supportive of that. Really, what the article is reflecting is not just the DEX space, but across my peers, right? Lots of tools lots of good things that were being done with tools that unfortunately, in a recessionary time, no fault through people or the tool or the project or anything else, they're canceled due to budgetary concerns. 7-8 figure savings aside, it still does happen.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Okay, look, Steve, it's the top of the year. Don't know exactly when this is going to be released, but it is still January, and we have a bit of a January tradition of imposing upon our January DEX Show guests the necessity.
I wasn't aware of this.
The necessity of a prediction. Steve. I need a prediction from you.
Oh, prediction?
So yeah, what do you think it was going to be? Like a hazing ritual or something? You sounded alarmed.
Well, I don't, is this a DEX a prediction? What kind of prediction?
Let's keep it within IT. Unless you got.
Okay,
yeah.
That's fair. That's
yeah,
fair.
go on, give it to me.
So, prediction. I talked about new entrants in the field. I think that's going to happen in the works. Microsoft's introduction. I think the prediction is there's going to be more folks who do recognize the stack consolidation of computing and security, and then how DEX goes into that. I think we're going to see a lot more interest from HR organizations and perhaps facilities, and whoever does real estate to get more green IT initiatives. I know, like, everyone talks about green IT, and IT tries to do green IT, but without partnering with the folks who actually pay the bills. Mm-hmm. Usually green IT initiatives don't go very far. But also the HR partnership as well, right? Actually embracing more employee experience concepts, developing XLA type metrics with suppliers. I think we're going to see more of that this year.
It's a good one. I don't think you're going to regret that when we review.
It's a safe
review
prediction.
our predictions at the end of the year.
Likely to be 80% right,
yeah.
So I'm not going to go. No, I think all good things in the space. I think employee retention is a problem everywhere, and I think from an IT perspective, it's not the whole pie, but at least have your IT experience be positive. Right? So it's simple, and it can actually improve your security posture and your overall computing costs as well.
Well said. Steve, pleasure having you on the show. Tell the listeners where they can find and follow you.
Oh, thank you. I get to do a plug. So, I think the best place is Ayla Consulting, LLC.com, or just follow on LinkedIn. I do say a couple things occasionally, but don't look for daily posts. But yeah, anyone who's looking to talk about the DEX space more, I always love to have a conversation about where you're at, where you want to go, and see if we could be a good fit together.
Superb. We'll have links to that to your website in the show notes, Steve. So thanks so much for coming on, and have a great 2023, and we'll hopefully see you again, man. Take care.
Thanks, Tom. Have a good one.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how NextThink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nextthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.